you guys can come up. Got Brian over here from Kaboom Racks. He's been mining since 2008. I guess everybody just take a seat. There's too many of y'all for me to introduce so fast. I think I'm just going to let you introduce yourselves. I've been collecting miners and OGs, as you can see. So I asked some of them to bring some of their early stuff that they remember from back in the day. So that's why you see some of the machines from the museum over here. Matt Carson right here is actually one of my mentors. He helped me get into the space and understand this better. Gerald Wilkie, he's out of North Carolina with me. Basically everybody here on stage I already know and worked with. So I guess I'm going to start with, if you don't mind introducing each one of yourselves on the way down.
I'm Matthew Carson, COO of Hash House. Can't really give myself a better introduction than CoinDad already did, but I go back to, and I chose the S1 miner. I've got some, very interesting stories about this one.
Hi, I'm Marko. I'm lead mining manager at NiceHash, and I also go back to the GPU days. I've been mining since 2012 and been doing it since then.
I'm Ian Decoto. I started mining in January of 2010, so a year after Bitcoin started. So I held back all the way from the CPU and GPU era, and I'm also mining up to this day. I'm the CTO of POW.RE, and so I'm still mining with ASICs today.
I'm Gerald Wilkie. I'm the founder and president of HM Tech. Started mining back in 2012 in the GPU days, just at the precipice of ASICs when they first came out.
I'm Scott from Digital Shovel, president and founder. Frankly, I don't know what I'm doing on this panel because I started way after these guys. It was still early, but I started GPUs around 2015, 2016. Still do some ASIC mining and stopped GPU when Ethereum went off proof of work. But honored to be on a panel with some of the leaders and early trendsetters in the space.
I'm Mark Fraser. I started mining. Thank you. I started mining in 2010. CPU mining. Signed up in Bitcoin Talk 2011. Kind of took the orange pill. I work with Vinish. I do BD, and yeah, happy to be here.
I'm Matt Hercules, side hack on the Bitcoin Talk forums. I run what?
You're a side hack.
Oh yeah. Nobody knows me. They know that handle.
Yeah,
I run Gecko Science, just a small home mining hardware company since 2015. Started on ASICs in 2013.
I'm Brian Snyder. I'm the CEO of Kaboom Racks. I started basically same time as these guys, end of 2012. So GPU minings, but really kind of kicking it off in the ASICs. So kick it off, sir. I think you need to keep one.
Well, I'm blessed to be on stage here with you guys because I'm not an OG. Technically, I consider some of you a double OG if you're like 2010. But yeah, there's a lot of history you have here on stage right now. I guess we'll start off with you here. You got the S1 in front of you. And that one has the red connector. Most of them have a yellow one. So with the red, it's the earliest S1. But why? Well, first, I would like to know, how did you get into Bitcoin mining? What attracted you to it? When did you said, the hell with everything else, I'm diving in head first? And why? And what are some of the stories that you can share with this miner that you have here?
Oh, let's see. I think probably like most of us on this stage stumbled upon Bitcoin and then Bitcoin mining via the Bitcoin Talk forums. That's how most of us got all of our information those days. That's how most of the manufacturers launched their new equipment. In fact, I remember when Bitmain first put their thread in the hardware forums about the S1, and I think the first 10, maybe 20 messages were just calling them a scam and all of that. So that was pretty, I don't think that's really changed in the industry. Someone comes out with a new miner and immediately it's a scam, it's fake, it's a Ponzi scheme. So it's nice to see some things haven't changed over time. I was moderately involved in GPU mining. I got started mining GPUs in my parents' garage. I ran up a $4,000 or $5,000 electrical bill in a summer in Texas. Was forced to cash out entirely too many coins to pay that bill. Let's say that I regret that one for a very long time. Then basically junior, senior year of college, sort of stumbled upon Bitcoin mining back when basically Avalon, BFL, and ASIC Miner all were sort of releasing the very first generation ASICs. And then just a couple months later, Bitmain comes along. In fact, this one here was manufactured December 1st of 2013. So this would have been probably a batch 2 or a batch 3. Because the very, very first original ones did not even have PCIe plugs. They had only the screw terminals. And that was not very easy for a lot of people to deal with. They had this somewhat useless Wi-Fi connector that I don't think I know of anyone who actually connected these things with Wi-Fi. They only sold 30 at a time. Yeah, and these were only sold in batches of 30 at a time. So my story with these really becomes, originally I had the plan of buying just pure ASICs from Bitmain and hiring some designers and, along with my capital partner at the time, building our own miner. So originally Bitmain was actually also selling chips, and at some point in the process they decided, oh wait, we have to release our driver files, our bombs, and we don't want to do that. So they essentially forcibly converted everyone who ordered chips into S1s and kind of basically said, take it or leave it, and if you don't take it, we're not giving your money back. So we all got...
that sounds very Bitmain.
We all got these S1 miners, which, not exactly the best design, best engineering. The original ones would leak thermal paste out of the bottoms of the boards within, a couple hours of turning them on. They used recycled car radiators, which are not exactly designed for this sort of purpose. And believe it or not, these things were sold at some point for over $4,000. And when Bitcoin, that was during the run-up, when it went from 20 up to 1340, it depends on which exchange you were looking at, but 1200s. But these miners were tanks. You could not kill them unless you tried, and even if you did try, it would probably still keep working. And everyone who got the first couple of batches of these, if they did not die in the first couple of weeks, not only reached return on initial investment, but every single one of these should have been profitable, which I don't think can be said for a lot of generations of ASICs, depending on when you bought them.
Maybe I should just keep the microphone and not share that one. Maybe I should just keep the microphone, all right? You have the S9 here in front of you.
Yeah.
And what kind of crazy stories can you tell us about that?
Probably not much about S9, other than it's a beast.
I consider it the most legendary miner of all the miners in the history of mining for ASICs.
Yeah, it went right from the previous ASIC had like 26 nanometer chips, right? And this one was like halving it. And obviously it was still profitable like 1 or 2 years ago to run it. So
it had like a cat, like 9 lives.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But my story goes that I learned about Bitcoin when I was playing Diablo 3, if anyone was playing that. There was an auction house in the game, and people used to grind the game, and we used Demon Body, if anybody knows about that. It was a bot that you could buy with Bitcoins, and then it would run the games. I had like 5 accounts running the game for me and selling the items. That's how I learned about Bitcoin. Then obviously I started mining it with the GPUs at the time. I remember one of the first rigs I built was with the AMD HD 7000 series, something like that. And at the time there was no risers as we know them right now. There was just like strips, and not even that. We would just search for the motherboards with as many PCI slots as possible, and you could probably fit like 3 or 4 GPUs on one board. yeah, those are my beginnings. And then my first contact with ASICs was, I think, in 2016 or 17 when the D3 came out. And that was a big burn because never
That
buy.
was the Dash Miner?
Yeah,
D3?
the Dash one. That was a big burn for me. I remember waiting in the Antminer store like for 2 hours or 3 hours so that I got into the web page because there was such a huge line. I paid at the time, I think it was half a Bitcoin for one ASIC. It said I'm gonna make $30 per day. When I got it, it was like $3. So that was my first experience with ASICs, and I decided to just stay away from it like for the most time. But one of my buddies got his hands on S9, and then we ran it at my place. And I actually ran it outside, just in some sort of cabin which was open, just a roof on the top, and it was running for years actually. So, as we said, those are beasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
During the downturn of the market, there was a moment where there were miners throwing them away.
Yeah.
I actually bought some for like 10, 15 bucks, I think 2018.
Yeah.
And then one guy told me, oh yeah, I have some in my dumpster. And he was in the next state over. So I drove over there and I went dumpster diving.
Yeah.
And I came home with, I think, 150 S9s in my Suburban, stacked like Tetris. And then I went and refurbished them. And then the next market came up, and then I sold them for like 200 bucks each out of the trash.
Is that the funding story for how you started the museum?
Partially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they were just a heavy paperweight at the time, so.
Yeah. But they were
good.
beasts, though. I actually went to one contract job with some technicians where we deployed 18,000 S9s in the facility, and they had truckloads coming in from China that just had a mud slide, and they were pulled out of the mud, put on the truck, and that's how we received them. I remember like refurbishing S9s that had Chinese rats, dead rats, cigarette butts, like crap from the mud just inside the machines. It was disgusting. But when we cut them back on, they worked. So that's why I consider them like the tanks of the industry.
Yeah, like you said, the cats with 9 lives.
Ian, how you doing?
Pretty good. I remember those pictures actually from China.
Yeah?
It was, I didn't know you work on those one, but it's
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
painful to see.
You're a double OG, I consider.
I guess.
I mean, if we interviewed you earlier at the Mining Museum, but I never knew until today that you're one of the first 50 people mining in the world. That's how early you are, and I think that's pretty impressive.
It's a guess, but if you look at the block that's being found, it's easy to like give pseudo identity to the people that found blocks. So if you look at the block that's been found, there's probably less than 50 miners. And at the time I subscribed to Bitcoin Talk, it was about 75 users. So it looks something like that number would be fair to say. So I started back in the days. I was running Tor exit nodes for the Tor network. I was really interested in giving like Chinese people access to the outside of China, outside of the Great Firewall of China. And at that time, Tor was really the key to that. And running Tor exit nodes require a lot of bandwidth and RAM, but like absolutely no CPU at all. Like the CPU is pretty much idle. So I was looking for something to do with my spare CPU. So at the time there was like, City at home and folding at home and all those kind of stuff, but it's not generating revenue. It's only a spare donation. And I was looking for something to generate revenue to offset the cost of running those Tor exit nodes. So looking on the internet, I found some article actually from some journalists in Quebec. So I don't know how she found about Bitcoin, but I found a French language article talking about Bitcoin mining and how it was a thing. So I started looking at it. It was January 3rd, 2011 at night. So I downloaded Bitcoin on Windows at the time on my desktop at home. And I just started the daemon and I went straight back to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, I had mined 4 blocks overnight.
Wait. Four blocks that early is 50 Bitcoin per block times 4. You woke up overnight to 200 Bitcoin in your wallet.
Which was virtually worthless.
And you're still here.
Yeah, but
You should be on an island somewhere.
No, I at the time it was worthless. So
That's true.
It's not like, oh, I won the lottery or anything. It's, oh, I made like 2 cents.
Yeah.
But it's after that deployed mining software because the Bitcoin QT or the Bitcoin D rather software in Linux wasn't so stable. So I deployed some mining software that will call APIs to Bitcoin D to get block template, not block template, but get work, I guess, at the time. And I started mining on like 10 servers, which was a significant part of the Bitcoin network at the time.
How much was it?
10 servers.
So that was like percentage of the network. What?
Maybe 10%, 15%.
10% of the whole global network.
Maybe.
In your garage or what?
No, at the time I was actually a customer of Global Tech Communication. I was a customer of Global Tech Communication since I was a teenager. If you guys don't know, Global Tech Communication is the first company that was founded by the founder of Bitfarms, Pierre-Luc Quimper. So actually I mined Bitcoin on his hardware before the guy even heard about Bitcoin. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, after that we moved to GPU, and I was doing my master's degree at the time, and after some class I went with a friend, and we went across all the computer store in Montreal, and we bought all that was AG 6850, 6870, 6950, anything that was on the shelf I bought with boards and...
Were you in the dorm just borrowing the electricity from the university?
No, at the time I was actually living in my mom's basement.
Okay.
So I actually maxed out her panel in the basement. So I was... And again, it was probably like 5% of the network.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Do you remember what laptop you were mining with when you first started? Or PC?
Oh, the PC. I had a laptop at the time.
'Cause that was still the CPU from the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I had a laptop. I don't remember what it was. But my desktop was a Q6400, I believe, or Q6600. One of the first quad-core from Intel. Yeah, so I had quad-core too to start with when most people had dual cores.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Gerald Wilkie.
So it's nice.
This is our first time.
Is it?
On stage together.
I think so.
Yeah.
You're over your fear of public speaking. You're good now.
I guess I'm okay.
You're doing great.
It's my first time.
It's
doing
I gotta
this.
say, yeah.
Sorry.
Give it love for the TheCoinDad.
I took a shot of vodka before I got on stage because of you guys. I'm gonna lie, I was a little nervous. But I mean, I'm friends with Gerald. We actually live only 10 miles apart, and he taught me a lot. He has the repair center over there in North Carolina, and I learned a lot from him. So it's kind of cool that I'm on stage with a friend of mine.
It's kind of cool being on stage with a bunch of folks that remember typing set generate true on their Bitcoin wallets, and that's how we mine Bitcoin. So, I started in 2012 with some desktop GPUs, and it was like a eureka moment when you get the payout and you get this little 8-bit pickaxe, and you're like, holy shit, I just turned electricity into money. It's like alchemy in the new age. And I was hooked immediately once we figured out that we could do this, and logged into Bitcoin Talk, and there was no bitmain.com or microbt.com. There was no official sales channel for any of this stuff. So we're on these forums, and there's this guy, Chinese guy, who's like, oh, I've got an ASIC that is 100 gigahash. And I was like, holy shit, what am I gonna do with all this Bitcoin? I've got to have these. So they were like $1,000 a piece. I didn't think about it. I was like, bro, give me 5. Send me the instructions. I'll wire you the money today. So he does. I go to the bank. I wire out $5,000 to mainland China, and I walk out in the parking lot, and I'm holding the paper like shit.
And this was before you had to tell your wife, right?
Oh no, she didn't know. Absolutely not. So I'm thinking that I just yeeted $5,000 into cyberspace. I'll never see it again. And then about 6 weeks later, I get these brown boxes that have got the V1 fried cats in there. And no instructions, just 10 blades, an ISA backplane, and an Ethernet port. So, short story, we figured out how to run them, got them plugged in. This is my first experience with ASIC heat. So I had them up in a.
They didn't come with no way to cool them. You had to make up your own rig.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
So upstairs, like room over my garage is like 120 degrees. I had to go to Walmart, buy some of those big ass box fans, right? And I'm plugging them all in around, and my only thought was I got to get some more of these. And about that time, I think the S1 had just launched, like Matt had talked about, and I was like, all right, we started ordering more products, and the rest is kind of history. It was once it gets in your system, it does.
Yeah.
It changes your DNA. It changes who you are. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, before we even got on stage, we were all back there talking, and you could sense the passion in the group when you guys start talking to each other. And that's one thing that I love about this space.
It definitely changes who you are.
Yeah, I mean, there's OGs that are rich today, but they're still here because they love what they're doing.
That's what's up.
Even though they can go at any time. How did you get in, though? Because you told me before your story, and this is pretty cool, how your whole career changed.
Yeah, so studying at home, folding at home, was super popular back then where you could do volunteer computing cycles. And at one point they had launched an app that kind of consolidated all the different volunteer computing apps into one, almost like a stratum that we use today. It was like you could pick which protocol or which project you wanted to support, and it was called BOINC, B-O-I-N-C. And I guess as I typed it, I hit BTC and just tapped enter, and Bitcoin came up, and I was like, the hell
So
is
you
that?
fat-fingered your career.
I did. Total accident.
That is so cool.
Yep. And actually, when I read that, it was pre all this. I thought it was like, I remember seeing that and thinking that there was no way, like the feds and the U.S. government's going to allow that. I was like, somebody's going to go to jail. That's going to be over in like 6 months. And then when I was at work, not that much longer, or not that much, time passed, as some guys were talking about it, I was like, oh shit, that's still around? And they're like, oh yeah. It's like, all right. And did my homework, and here we are.
Awesome. When did you start HM Tech, and what caused you to say, I'm done with this full-time job, I'm diving head first? When was your, oh shit moment, this is real?
When I almost burned my house down.
When you almost burned your house down?
So I'm not an electrician, like full disclosure. And I ran out of power in the room where my garage. There's like, a couple 15 amp plugs or whatever. So I'm like, all right, where's this power come from? Let's go to the garage. And we opened the electrical panel. There's a bunch of breakers in there. And I was like, I've seen these things at Lowe's before. I can go get a few more. And so I realized there's a limit. Who knew? So I'm running wires up to the, over the garage. I've got stuff running in the garage. And my wife is like, you're going to burn the house down and we're going to have a problem. I was like, no, I don't think I am. And then whatever minor number it was, they got plugged in and flipped it and tripped the main to the house. Julie was not real happy with me. We had a very serious conversation. I was like, all right, baby, no problem. I'm going to quit my job. Didn't go. Right, so that didn't go well. But, in full transparency, she was super supportive. Like, once we talked about it, she's in accounting, so she wanted to see the numbers. So once we sat down and talked about it, I was like, I think this thing's here to stay, and you know what, I'm going to support it, and I think it's what we need to do, and we did.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I got an awesome wife that helped me. I had a resignation letter. I worked for the government at the time. I had a resignation letter typed up, ready to turn in, because doing this part-time, I was doing better than working for the government full-time. Right. And I didn't know how to tell my wife, I'm going to throw my pension out the window for all this. And then I remember the moment where she walked down the hallway into my office, leaned up against the door frame in my office and said, honey, why don't you just quit your job because you got so much passion for this? And I'm like, what? Like 5 minutes later, I sent that email straight to my manager and quit my job.
See, it was probably good because that pension's in fiat, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
You did good. You did good then.
I did good. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Scot Johnson.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
You're doing fantastic. Yourself?
I can tell you're doing good. I'm doing great. Explain your own fat finger story. How did you get into Bitcoin?
So maybe like for some of the newer people here that got into it recently, the story's a little more relatable. I thought it was a complete fucking scam when I started.
Yeah.
I thought mining was hacking into people's wallets and trying to take their coins. And I had another tech startup. I went to this entrepreneurs dinner, and I was there sitting around a table with a group of guys. and Bitcoin came up, and I'm just, you guys all know me, I'm pretty vocal of my opinions. So I brought this up, and he's like, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. I'm like, the best thing I can do is be wrong. Why don't you educate me? I'm not going to name his names, but he's the father of a founder of a particular coin that gave me this lecture, and not Bitcoin or anything, but I was so wrong. So I went home, I bought, I think it was like an R7 280 or something like that, and started mining Zcash.
Yeah.
At like,
I ain't gonna lie, I got a little bit of that.
3 souls or something like that per second, and got my first couple of coins, and then over the next, this was like 2015, 2016-ish, slowly started to build up more coins, or more graphics cards to, by the point it started 2017, I had, like you, every outlet in my house completely maxed, a bunch of them that were burned. It was in a condo, so I had extension cords running from every different room, and people would come over and like, what the hell is this? I'm like, don't worry about it.
What about the noise in the condo?
Who cares? I mean, it was a 3-bedroom condo, so it was tucked into different rooms. And that was, and then 2017, I think it was February, Ethereum. I was mining Ethereum mainly at that point. I think it went to $100, and then it went to $400 in June or July of that year. And I'm like, okay, this is something. And kind of wound down the other business, and then started Digital Shovel to do our first container in 2018.
That's
and
what pushed you into it, is
Yeah.
just maxing things out and
and
get your own
almost
spot.
burning out outlets and almost having fires and all that. I'm like, okay, there's probably a safer way to do this. And then
Yeah, I think
and then people
that's-
started asking me to make containers for them, and that's how Digital Shovel came to be.
I think that's when we first met too.
It
and
was,
I was
yeah.
trying to help sell some of those back in the day.
Yeah, shortly after.
Actually, there's a woman who wanted to fly up to Canada.
A bunch did. I mean,
I just
Matt
never got
here
around.
helped sell a pile of my first containers, brought a pile of our first customers to us. Still does.
Well, he's a link for a lot of stuff.
Very
Smart
much
PDUs,
so.
dumb
A lot of
BDUs,
guys, a
everything.
lot of people on this panel are linked for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Dang, I forgot your name.
It's Mark.
Mark.
How could you forget?
I did not forget your name, Mark. I'm messing with you.
I was told
He's
I'm
the guy with the
unforgettable.
weird little green icon on his Telegram.
Yeah, I have Gerv from
Only
Invader
first
Zim.
thing I want to say about you is that you don't look like an OG.
Oh man,
You still got that baby face.
I'm
You
like
don't look-
Father Time up here.
To me, 1 year in crypto is like 3 years in the real world. So technically, everybody got like 30 years of experience over here.
Yeah, I got in like 2011 and 2010. I was like that nerdy kid on the robotics team. You know, Bitcoin's the future, man. And like playing video games. I wanted to buy more video games. Hey, guess what? You can't have a PayPal because you're underage, so they ban you, and you make another one. They take the funds, so on and so forth. So there was this cool currency called Liberty Reserve, which kind of works. You do some online stuff, get paid, buy games. That worked out well until the Fed shut it down for money laundering. That was pretty cool.
What year was that?
Liberty Reserve probably got shut down in like around the birth of Bitcoin. I don't know, but Bitcoin came around, and hey, I can use my gaming PC, gaming laptop, desktop, to make some digital currency, sell some stuff. A little harder back then, very hard back then, but started off CPU mining, and like you said before, you had to download the whole blockchain, which it wasn't big back then, but computers sucked back then, and you press the little pickaxe and you CPU mine, and you're lucky if you get something. And then that turned into, like 2011, 2012, GPU mining. I didn't have money, but I had my laptop, and it was an XPS M1530.
You actually remember the model.
The reason I remember the model is because it went in for like 6 or 7 warranty claims because I burned up the graphics card on it.
They didn't question you about why you brought it back
what was
7
really,
times.
What was really great is NVIDIA had a massive lawsuit, so they extended the warranty another like 2 years. So that was great. That did really well. But yeah, I remember like back in the day, they had it was called like the Python OpenCL. Like, there was a Python written Bitcoin miner. I mean, it worked. And then throughout that, buying and selling Bitcoin. I could tell you about the $5 bubble and the $30 bubble. I sold at all of them. I'm an idiot. I spent most of my Bitcoin buying gift cards from GIF.com to like go fly out to go to concerts and stuff. I looked back not that long ago and realized I could probably own a small island, but in my other life, I won't make that mistake. What other fun ones were there? Got into the ASICs, dug in deep with the S9s, bought a bunch of those, lived in my parents' basement. Well, I wasn't. They were living in my parents. I might as well have been living in my parents' basement. But that was fun. I got my first delivery, called up my electrician, and S9s and actually L3 pluses were making bank back then.
Yeah, I
L3
remember
Plus
that.
was like, if you had first batch, it was a G a day. So I remember calling my electrician. I can't do it. Found out my neighbor's cousin who lives like a couple streets over is an electrician. Next thing you know, the guy's over in the middle of the night. He's like, oh, what are we doing? I'm like, I need 5 30 amps and a sub panel. And the guy's, what the hell's going on? Next thing you know, there's 180 amps of power in my parents' basement of a 200 amp service house. 2 1 foot by 1 foot windows. I'm at Home Depot buying attic gable fans, trying to vent air out there. It was kind of nice though. It was the middle of winter. It's cold. It's Connecticut. There's snow. One side of the house, the grass is growing. My dad
nice
told me I
and
had to
green,
go cut the lawn. It was also nice. You go take a shower, you walk downstairs, and you just dry off in the heat. That was pretty cool. What wasn't cool was when my mom yelled at me because the basement was 125 Fahrenheit. The S9s, you can't kill them. I didn't know this, but apparently hardwood floors shrink when it gets really hot.
Wow.
So I shrank all the hardwood floors in the house. That was pretty cool. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching this.
She was tripping over the planks as they're bending out.
Yeah, there was also the $9,000 or $10,000 electricity bill. That was cool. I remember I called the electrical company and said there was something wrong because obviously I'm trying to get out of this. So the guy shows up, looks at the little meter and sees it spinning. He's like, "What you got going on in there?" I'm like, "I don't know. I think the meter's bad. I didn't get out of it." But yeah, that's like early old school degenerate mining, And yeah, how about you take it?
Matt, how you doing, sir?
I don't know, a little hungry.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
This is your first mining conference, as far as I understand, right?
Yeah, technically, I went to the Bitcoin 23 down here a couple months ago for a few hours. Just there's enough people that I needed to talk to were there. It was worth the drive.
If I'm not mistaken, you're making history right now as being the first founder of a manufacturing company making miners on stage talking.
Yeah,
I don't know any others prior to you.
By far the brokest guy on stage because I do everything the hard way. But yeah.
I don't know. Has Jihan Wu been here? I don't think so. No.
All right.
Yeah, I think you're the first one.
Oh, okay. Well, I technically heard about Bitcoin mining in I think February of 2012. I was working for a local computer shop doing mostly LCD screen refurb and stuff. And the guys who worked the front end doing virus scans on old ladies' laptops during free time were talking. Someone mentioned a thing where you could do math, in spare time on your laptop or your computer or whatever, and get money for it. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a real thing. About a year later was April 2013. I think there was a big bubble right then, and then popped, and so it was in the news. A guy at church come up to me and said, "Hey, Herc, what do you know about Bitcoin?" I was like, I've never heard that word before. So I went, I was the tech guy there, so he's like, "Oh, I figured you would know." So I went home and just started reading. I spent 2 days just sitting in front of the computer, just reading up on the history, the algorithms, the software, everything, and started playing with a CPU miner. Yes, in 2013. It was whopping 400 kilohash, I think. So maybe, I don't know. Got some GPUs. Built a rig by June. But fell for the BFL jalapeno. $300. You'll get it in 60 days. And
most hated manufacturer in history back then.
Yeah. Well, they were out of Kansas City, and I was out of Rolla. Actually, I started in the same town as Carson.
Yeah, y'all knew each other from back then, right?
He was my first customer, actually.
Wow.
Before we started building miners, I was building server power supply interface boards, and we had our own cabling and everything. And he was our first customer, bought for his shop.
Very cool.
But let's see, I started the USB block eruptors. Came out that summer.
And what you got in your lap there, right there?
Well, this is a Cube. This is their
That's the
third
Cube.
gen
Oh,
product.
you mean the little 330 megahertz? Mega
USB stick.
hash.
I bought one of those. I had gone on the Bitcoin Talk forums and seen some guys overclocking them, so I started playing around with the hardware and cranked them up to almost 500 and bought a blade, and I knew that the hardware was almost identical on them. The
same blade he's got?
What he's got. Yeah, that's.
You had the V1 though, right?
No, I got it on V2s. I bought a
Okay,
V1
so that's-
later
okay.
out of interest. But it's the same chips, pretty similar power setup. Not even chain data. It's all So I got one in, one arrived, and within 12 hours I had it running. Instead of the 10.7, I had it running 14 gigahash. So started selling.
So you basically hacked it.
Yeah, started selling overclock kits for those and stuff. I had seen just a random post somewhere where someone said, "Oh, you can't just like create a profitable mine out of nothing." I was like, "Yeah, I bet I can." I do everything the hard way. Because I had actually gotten a PayPal refund on the jalapeno after 4 or 5 months. Turned that into, I think I bought 4 Bitcoins with it, used that to buy a blade, and then used that to sell kits and I was taking in blades from other people to overclock and test and ship back out. Ended up, the guy I was buying blades from asked me if I would do warranty repairs for him. And then I ended up doing warranty repairs for another. There were like 3 major resellers, and I was doing work for 2 of them. But I could keep 1/3 of the hash rate I fixed. And so I was fixing a bunch of stuff and keeping miners and selling some so I could buy other things. And I got in on the second batch of the S1s, because the first batch everyone thought was a scam. So we knew they shipped, they were real, so I got on in batch 2. I think it was, with the exchange rate, I forget exactly, but it was around $4,300 shipped. I got it like 2 days before Christmas, and so I just,
Roughly 5 or 6 Bitcoin at the time.
it was 4.5, something like that.
Yeah.
It was nuts. But I had bought my blade for 4 Bitcoins a few months earlier, and I bought those for $116 a coin. And by Christmas, it was like 1,000. So it was a crazy time. I ended up, by that spring, I had several terahash running just in a spare bedroom. And then kind of switched gear. I proved that I could make a profitable mine out of nothing. So then I switched gears to just, instead of buying super profitable gears, like, I'll just get fun stuff. Sold most of my S1s, bought an S2 kit and a Dragon.
You got an S2?
Yeah.
Those are rare.
I've got a stock and a S2 kit.
And they broke in shipping a whole lot
Yeah.
with the mash boards shaking around in there.
The kit, S2 kit, actually came without a case. It was just the electronics, just the boards on a backplane, all
I never
packed
knew that.
separately. And yeah, so you had to supply your own enclosure. But nothing broke, because it was all like bubble wrapped and stuff. So I got one of those.
Okay, we need to talk again after this.
Yeah, we do. Because I just started. I switched from mining to kind of collection mode, and started just picking up a bunch of cool stuff.
How did Gecko Science get started, or what caused you to start that?
My friend David from college, he actually works. He's a rocket scientist in Texas now. It's pretty cool. He has stuff in orbit right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is he mining out of orbit? That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it turns out he actually worked with a guy who mined Bitcoin in the GPU days. So like when we started a business together, we had been talking since college about working together. A couple of years in, he was in Ohio, came back to Missouri. We set up shop when I was still doing hardware refurb. And I was playing with miners, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, Bitcoin stuff." He pulls out his wallet and pulls out one of those actual Bitcoin, like the coins.
The caches.
Yeah, that he had bought for $7 a couple years before. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been on this forever." I was like, "Oh, screw you, dude."
I paid like $100,000 coins now or something.
Yeah. And he's probably still got it just in his pocket.
3x the BTC price.
Crazy.
3x value.
Yeah. So we teamed up and started. We had some projects going, and we're still doing hardware refurb, and we started building power supply breakout boards for server supplies, which just had a backplane connector. Broke it out to cables with a actual power switch and everything, so that people could run miners on inexpensive and fairly efficient, like secondhand server gear, instead of needing to buy a couple $100 ATX supplies that would, burn up frequently. By 2015, we were looking at miners enough. I think the S5 was out by then. Yeah, it had to have been. It rolled out December the year before, neighborhood. We got to thinking, like, well, I bet we could just make one of those. So we contacted Bitmain, and they actually did sell us chips. They got us about 6 sample chips, and our very first batch, we teamed up with BitShopper in Germany. We made 1,000, and he made 800, so we got 1,800 chips out of Bitmain the BM 1384s from the S5, and then they never talked to us again. So we just kind of been scrounging ever
So
since.
they closed their door to everybody after that for that.
Yeah. So that's just went from playing around with hardware to still just playing around with hardware.
So what's your focus on today with as a company standpoint? Like, what's your customer base? What are you looking at right now?
We still build small scale miners. Actually, not to blatantly product plug, but I still have we still manufacture USB stick miners. Yes, today.
You're using the new chips though from today.
Yeah,
right?
it's got a S17 chip. This stick, if you ask it nicely, will hit half a terahash by itself. Wow. Yeah, and we got bigger stuff.
That's cool.
But still geared toward home mining.
Wait, oh, yeah, he made a good point. That little stick he just pulled out has more hash rate than the whole S1 right here. Out of that one chip.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. From the very first miner, it was like 130 nanometer, the Avalon 1.
I believe so, yeah.
And it's 130, and we're at 5 nanometer in just 10 years.
Yeah.
So technology is moving pretty fast in this industry. I don't know, are we at a plateau? Do you guys feel that we're getting close to a plateau when it comes to the nanometer?
To a degree. I think it's slowing down. You're seeing longer and longer periods in between nodal changes, and there's a lot of complicated issues coming up with the silicon and thermodynamics. So yeah, I'd say we're approaching barriers, but there's a lot of really smart people. I mean, if you look at lithography in general, just how they actually do the circuitry and everything else, it's mind-blowing. It's probably the most complicated machine mankind has ever put together. It makes the space shuttle look like nothing. So
Only reason I asked that question is because being at this conference, I see some of these other manufacturers coming out that I've never heard of before until now, and finding out that the nanometer is going backwards. One of them's using 8, one of them mentioned 12, one of them was at 7, and I'm like, wait a second, I thought we're supposed to go this way.
there's other approaches to architecture that some of the ASIC manufacturers are looking at taking that allows them to gain efficiencies in some of the older, more mature nodes. And so there's, again, different approaches, running them in lower voltages, lower frequencies, more efficient, and just more chips. And because of the different costs and the expense into entering the newest node, or the 3 nanometer node, it's far more cost effective. You can print a lot more chips for a lot cheaper, more availability, and then run them. Eventually, it's like underclocking. If you guys have done, I'm sure everybody at Pure has, but it's an underclock approach. So there's a couple different architectures that are out there. It's pretty interesting. But you can run, Bitmain will hate me for this, but you can run 2 S19J Pros underclocked at effectively 1,500 watts and make an XP. And they cost $1,000 pop, $2,000 versus a $3,800 XP. There's a cheap XP for you. So,
Yeah.
And then of course, show myself. You can pick them up from us. So,
One thing I wanted to mention
ahead.
is I know what you're talking about when as you said, you can use older gen nodes and downclock them and so on and so forth. But as far as like progress with chip development, from what I recall, 2024 Intel does the A20, and then 2025 is the A18, which is a 1.8 nanometer node. So that would then be half of what we're currently at in 2 years. So
But
it's
at
still
what
it's
point,
still
I know you
happening.
can air cool miners and chips, and then we got immersion now, but how much can immersion cool? At what point can immersion not cool a chip anymore? Don't you have a phase when it's continuity in the chip can't go through, anymore? I don't know how long you can go.
you're just, again, it's more thermal challenges. Smaller you get, the chips become far more sensitive to heat. But yeah, that's a total side. I don't know if you want me to go through this find or not. I know.
Yeah. Sorry.
So no, I was gonna say.
So
this,
you have this.
This isn't. This isn't
What
when
did
I started mining,
Gerald had a
but-
nickname for it? What was it?
The What's 9.
The What's 9. This is not an S9. Well, it is an S9, but it isn't.
Don't confuse
right?
people
I'm
there.
going to confuse everybody here. So what's hilarious about this thing, there are only 4,000, as far as I know, this is all secondhand information. There are about 4,000 of these kits that were made. What this is, it's a replacement control board and replacement hash boards. Effectively, I believe it was under the M20 architecture, as far as I know, and
M29.
basically, yeah, they called this the M29, but this is a micro BT controller, micro BT boards, and they were just basically parasiting and stealing all the S9 chassis and running and operating and increasing the efficiency. There's a rumor out there, I don't have a lot of validation, but apparently Bitmain was not very happy about this, and there was a lot of legal litigation and yelling and whatnot, and that's why only 4,000 were produced, because it's a good concept. It's a really good one. Lots of parts and things that you can replace. So
cheap shipping.
Pretty cool one.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this isn't where I started. Like, you guys have better memories than me. I think I've fried my brain on this stuff, but like, I can't remember, my first ASIC was probably, I remember the first one that really made me really angry was the KNC Jupiter, which,
Interesting.
with the first batch that ended up shipping, they ended up using, I believe it was plastic clips to hold a really heavy CPU heatsink block directly onto the board. And so what ended up happening is during transit and shipping, the plastic clips broke. And then this giant block was flying around inside, and it was like confetti. Like, you opened up the Jupiter, and it was literally just confetti of the board. It was bad.
You got them looking like they came out of a blender, right?
It looked like a blender. It was a nightmare. I remember opening it. I'm like, this shouldn't sound like this.
Did you get the ones that had, the GE VRMs that also had a tendency to kind of literally blow up in your face?
I don't think there was much left after the shipping to test. I think we salvaged one or two out of 20 or 30 of them. But actually, in KNC's defense, they were really good. They actually pulled inventory off their shelves, zippy tied it so that it would hold there, and then we got those about a month late. So, zip ties.
I call that quality control right there. Oh yeah. Well, speaking of which, I think I've never met a person with 2.6 million flyer miles. This guy's flown around the world to all these different sites and stuff. And he actually, I donated the exact miner that you're referring to, the Jupiter.
Yeah.
I had a spare one from the museum, which was kind of like my backup, but I donated it to the Satoshi Action Fund, and he flew from Dallas to Chicago all the way to Sweden to meet the founder of KNC Miner, who didn't believe that he was even coming after we told him. And at the airport, met him in the terminal to get this miner autographed. And he confirmed to me on video call from the airport that he has never signed a miner before. So that was the first one. And he hasn't seen his own miner in over 10 years. So it was kind of like a little emotional moment with him too. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we got some strange looks from the people at the airport bar where we were signing this at. Like, what are these guys doing at 7:30 in the morning, unpacking this server out of this guy's suitcase, pulling out a Sharpie? Sam's daughter was videotaping us.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing.
I had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was dead tired waiting for you guys just to get on the video.
And I think I still have the 3 TSA has inspected your luggage stickers that thing was inspected in between Dallas and Stockholm. So we might have to include those in the exhibit.
That would be pretty cool.
So,
do you remember when you got into Bitcoin? Like, what was your story of first getting involved?
honestly, a buddy of mine really he's like, hey, look at this, man. We should do this. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, this kind of seems funny money, right? Like, not sure about it. And he's like, come on, man. And so we started. He was actually an online friend. Had never actually met him in real life. And we just decided to go, screw it. Let's start a business. And he drove his car all the way from Ohio, Sandusky, Ohio, to Phoenix, Arizona. And then we started our business. So it was pretty interesting, and that was in 2012. We were really focused on GPUs, so a lot of stuff regarding GPUs, designing cases, airflows. Gerald and I have some fun stories. We connected last year and figured out, oh, holy crap, like that explains a lot. Like we had somebody came along and cloned our case design, but they hadn't figured out like how the USB cables worked. So anyways, ended up being a pretty entertaining one when you start talking to some of these guys and like relating stories. Like connections are made, and I think that's one of the neatest things about talking to some of these guys. Like you make connections. Like, hey, I was on this side of the transaction. I was on this side of the transaction, and you kind of have a better understanding of the overall picture.
For sure, we actually were off stage right there, and somebody said the word gray matter, and I was like, holy shit, you guys know gray matter? And Brian's like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
no
it was
way.
like I founded that company, so that's when we were very heavily in GPUs. But I remember grid seeds were very early on. Like I said, I have no clue in the time anymore. My brain's fried. But like, you had the grid seeds were these silly little like radiator things, the single chip on them, kind of like the USB sticks, but different. Those were interesting. The KNC and then the S1. Those were really the starting points for me on the ASIC journey. But I was stubborn. I was like, all right, we're going Litecoin minings now with these GPUs. So it's like we just kind of, bounced, and we're kind of doing the ASIC things on the side, and continue to evolve.
A lot of you guys jumped over to Litecoin, if I remember correctly. A lot of y'all mined Litecoin, right? I remember there was a moment where the price dropped on them, and I got them for dirt cheap. I had like 30 of them in my shop. And then I found somebody in North Carolina that wanted to buy them from me. I didn't even know that he was near me. He ended up showing up in the Honda Civic, like a little two-door coupe. And I'm like, where the heck am I going to stuff 30 L3++ in here? And he literally had like a strap on the trunk, puts them in the back seat, puts them in the passenger seat, and he left my shop with the whole ass end like so low to the ground, leaving out of there. And I'm like, what the heck is it with these Litecoin miners? And then I figured out the whole Dogecoin thing just happened, and then that's the reason why he wanted them so bad.
Well, that was one of the interesting things, actually. The grid seed was a dual SHA-256 and Litecoin miner. It could actually switch between them or run them simultaneously. No, it wasn't an FPGA. It was a dual engine ASIC. It was really crazy, but I think that's probably one of the more unique items you have.
I have one in the museum.
You have one in the museum.
I got the
saw it
round
last
ones
time.
and then the
round one with the squares.
The blade,
yeah.
the longer one.
That was a 5-chip. Okay.
Yeah. I think there was a couple of ASICs that did multi-algorithm mining. There was the Baikal ones. Were there?
Yeah.
No, I think it was an ASIC.
No, these are ASICs, yeah. The grid seeds were definitely ASICs. But
what do you guys know about fried cat?
Nothing.
See, that's the answer I get from a lot of people. So if y'all didn't know, in the early days, this is just from me studying up history, but just sharing it with you guys. Fried cat is kind of like a Vitalik Buterin from China that came to Harvard here in the U.S. 2011 or 12, and he read the white paper while he was at Harvard and quit, went back home to China because he figured out the white paper that quickly, and started inventing an ASIC chip, which I think was the BE100, and he started making his own mining farm with his own miners. Was not out in public yet. In the same time that Avalon was making their first chip. So the Avalon 1 came out the market first, January 2013. And through my studies, I actually found, it was pretty cool, I actually found out that the original team that designed that chip, there's a female named Chen Min that helped design this chip. So it's kind of cool that a female is involved from the early days of mining. But they kind of kept her secret, from what I understand back then. She was kind of like a secret weapon for Avalon back in the day. But Fried Cat ended up making the blade, 10 gigahash, that one right there, actually. And I don't even know how I don't remember really how I found it, but it's very hard to find that. And he's supposedly gone today, disappeared since 2015 with 140,000 Bitcoin, which is like Michael Saylor level stuff. Some of the people some of the people back then, you guys heard of him. I don't know if any of you had dealings with him. You have?
Not in person.
No, but what's your experience from Fried Cat back then? What do you remember?
Messages on Bitcoin Talk.
Really weird interaction. Actually, my first and only interaction with him before he really hired any sales staff or anything was buying the 500 count boxes of the USB miner sticks and reselling them. If you guys remember, I probably remember the name wrong. Was it Bitmint, or it was the Bitcoin eBay? And I remember selling a ton of those on those out of my place in Rolla. So would pick up the box from FedEx, UPS, or DHL, and then go raid the post office for all the priority mail packaging, pack them up, ship them out. Started getting really weird looks from that post office. But I don't actually know anyone who actually talked to Fried Cat in person.
It'll come out later in a video on the Bitcoin Mining Museum website, but there is an OG at this conference that I interviewed earlier that actually physically met him and even took a photo of him. And it's a photo that's not even on the internet, so that'll come out later. But I met somebody today that met him, and he did say that he was laid back, quiet. He wasn't in the forefront.
So you're gonna dox him then, huh?
Well, I mean, if he's gone since 2015, I don't know if I can dox him anymore. It's 10 years later.
The his chips, the BE100 was the first gen. They made a BE200.
Yeah.
That went on tubes, Prismas, the like RBOC stuff. Just before he disappeared, they had production samples of a BE300 and sample, power efficiency curves and stuff. That actually, the announcement on those chips was what got us thinking about making miners. Our first design, we were looking at wanting to use those, and then he vanished, so we had to figure out what we could do as a backup.
Yes, I think Jihan Wu invested into him back in 2012 in the early days, from what I understand. And also, on the Avalon side of things, it's something that's I think is pretty noble. This is one of the co-founders, NG, from Avalon, decided to open source the software for that first miner. And that's basically what gave birth to Bitmain and all the other companies that are out today. I mean, they could have held it for themselves, but he understood that that was not a healthy thing to do for the Bitcoin community. So I just wanted to share that as well. Not a lot of people know that. Do you guys also know that what was the Sats? Everybody calls it Satoshi now for the smallest denomination, but I found out that Satoshi actually called it BitCent back in the day. Did you guys hear that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, I told you. Oh, that's why you know. Okay.
Does that count?
Was that before or after my shot that I took? Yeah. Well, I guess we're going to wind it down here right now. I really appreciate you guys coming on stage and sharing this moment and y'all's history. Is there anything that you guys want to share before we get off this panel? Anything unique? Anything else that you blew up?
I think one thing that all of the stories from all the OG guys have in common, it's definitely been a hell of a ride. So running down the Bitcoin path, being innovators and pioneers of technology, it's a challenge, but it's fun. You got to have the right type of personality for it, and when you find those people, it's pretty easy to connect.
You guys are still here all these years later, so that speaks for itself. And it's an addictive community.
One thing I'd like to highlight, and it's humbling being on a stage with so many OGs, me getting into it a lot later than a lot of you, and then I still get people come up every day like, oh, you got into it early. I'm like, bro, you don't even know these guys. But it is still early. Still not too late. Like, even though these guys make me feel like I got in way too late, everybody's going to make you feel like you got in too late. If you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, just do it.
Oh, only thing I could say is also a shout out to Mining Disrupt for bringing the Bitcoin Mining Museum down here. We drove 1,000 miles from North Carolina with all that stuff. So if you find some time and haven't checked it out yet, we're down there by the Whale Lounge on the other side. So check us out. But I appreciate you guys, man.
To you as well. I mean, what you're doing for the museum, the history, everything you're capturing right now and documenting is fantastic. Being able to have a living record of it as we move forward. A lot of these industries, you go back to the PC world and everything else, prior to CES, you look at it, and there's not a lot of documentation or anything survived from that. So what you're doing is a really great project, and I know especially everybody here, or OGs, we absolutely, love and support the museum. So
a lot of you guys are already advisors on the panel for the Bitcoin Mining Museum, and I appreciate y'all's time with making sure that I put out the right information to begin with.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.